Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. See that people are starting to join, but we will get started right away so we get to the good stuff. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. This presentation will be conducted fully in English, but we do have interpretation available in Spanish and French, which you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Y hola a todos, bienvenidos. Muchísimas gracias por unirse al webinar de hoy. Para esta reunión
Thank you
tenemos
very much for
interpretación
joining
en
our
español y en
webinar
francés,
today. We have
ya que toda la
interpretation in
presentación
English,
será en
Spanish, and
inglés.
French because
Para
all the
usarla,
presentation will be in
simplemente
English.
tienen que ir
To
al
use it,
icono de
please go to the
interpretación
icon
en la
of
parte inferior de la
interpretation on the
pantalla
lower
de Zoom.
part
El
of the
icono
Zoom.
aparece como un
The
globo con
icon
radios.
is like
Si no lo ven, hagan clic
oh,
en el icono
and
de
if you
los
don't
tres
see it,
puntos en la
just
parte inferior y ahí
click on the
encontrarán
three
la
dots.
opción de
There,
interpretación.
you would find
Una
the
vez ahí,
option for
verán la
interpretation.
lista de idiomas,
Once you are there,
seleccionan el que
you have a
prefieran y
list of
comenzarán a
languages.
escuchar al
Select
intérprete.
the
Si
ones you
necesitan
want,
ayuda en cualquier
and you select
momento, por
the
favor no duden
interpreter.
en
Don't
escribirnos a
doubt
través
in
del chat
writing
de Zoom.
through the
Y
chat.
muchas gracias y
And
comenzamos muy
thank you very
pronto.
much. And we
Now
will
to
start
Lucy.
very soon. Lucy?
Bonjour tout le monde. La présentation va se faire en anglais. Néanmoins, si vous voulez écouter la présentation en français, vous n'avez qu'à
The
aller
presentation
à
will
la
be
partie
in
inférieure
French.
de votre écran.
You
Peut-être que ça prend la
can
souris pour
look in
passer.
the
Vous allez
lower
voir un
part
globe
of the
ou une
bar.
option qui dit plus ou une option
You
qui
can find
a
an
3 petits
icon
points dans la partie inférieure de votre
or an
écran.
option with
Donc, si
three
vous
little
allez là, vous allez
dots
voir
on
l'option français.
the
Si vous
Zoom,
choisissez
and you will
français à
find
ce
the
moment-ci,
option for
vous
interpretation. You
allez
can select
avoir toute la
French
présentation en
or
français, interprétée en
Spanish,
français.
and you can
Donc,
hear
je vous
the
suggère de choisir maintenant
interpretation
pour ne
in
rien
your
manquer. Merci et bonne
select the
présentation.
language right now. Thank you. And good luck.
Donc, I'm switching to English. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy that you're joining us today on this presentation that will give you an overview of the 4 new guides that we have made on nature-based solutions to address flood risk in coastal communities. First, I want to give you a few words about the CC. We are an intergovernmental organization that was established over 30 years ago by Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and is led by the heads of the environmental authority of each country. So that's Environment Climate Change Canada, the Environmental Protection Agency in the US, and Semarnat in Mexico. So our mission is to facilitate cooperation to conserve, protect, and enhance the North American environment in support of sustainable development. We provide a unique space for decision makers, practitioners, and the public to engage on environmental issues in North America. And together we conduct research, we develop and provide tools and trainings, and we share knowledge across the continent so that all can benefit from each other's experience. Next, please. So a good part of our work is project-based, and this webinar is taking place to share with you the results of our project focused on nature-based solutions, NBS, again, to address flooding in coastal communities, which we have worked on with the government agencies listed here. And we developed this project after the 3 governments identified the need to support the use of nature-based solutions by removing barriers to their implementation. The focus here was really on supporting decision makers by providing accessible information so that they could consider NBS as viable options for their infrastructure projects. Whether they were for new infrastructure projects or for updates of existing ones. Next, please. So briefly, just to make sure we're all on the same page, that's what we are talking about here. Nature-based solutions, that is using, integrating, or mimicking natural systems as part of infrastructure to mitigate coastal flood risk. while also providing environmental, social, and economic co-benefits. And of course, this comes in contrast with the classic gray infrastructure that has been the main approach in most places. Next, please. So how we did this work briefly, we worked with our consultant from the DHI group when we began this project, really by holding a series of workshops with experts from the 3 countries to identify common priority issues that we could focus on. So basically, we had an ask to work on this general question, but we were trying to identify the best way to add value to this in North America. So based on input from the 76 participants that were part of the workshop, we identified 3 themes that frame the guideline development process. The 3 themes that surface were that first, there's an opportunity to better communicate the co-benefits offered by NBS. There is a need for information on retrofitting existing infrastructures with NBS. And finally, there is a need for more information on monitoring the performance of NBS, and also a need for methodology to do that monitoring. So we developed 4 guidance documents to address these needs and these opportunities. Of these documents, the monitoring methodology itself was co-developed with further workshops with experts. So the first workshops identified the priorities, and we had another workshop specifically with a smaller group of experts on developing a methodology for monitoring. Next, please. So the guidance documents and accompanying briefing notes are now expected to support a greater uptake of nature-based solutions by coastal communities that are planning to replace infrastructure or to install new infrastructure to, again, address coastal flood risks. Although you can argue that there's other uses for this, not strictly limited to coastal flood risk. But again, the point is to offer decision makers options that are better adapted to current and future environmental conditions. Next slide. So the guides also, although they each have, the 4 guides have their specific topics, they also have, across the board, they serve multiple objectives. They're there to explain how nature-based solutions help reduce flood risk while providing other benefits. They offer tools to support decision-making. They offer summaries of opportunities and options available, and also of constraints to implementation. They provide on-the-ground examples of nature-based solutions used through case studies that are in the guides. And finally, they outline best practices when considering an NBS project. So practitioners can now use these products to take decision makers through a process where they will learn what to consider for retrofitting existing infrastructure. They will be informed of the co-benefits, and they will receive guidance on monitoring the effectiveness of NBS, a requirement that is often there in municipal and in similar settings where they have an obligation to monitor effectiveness. So they can do this while, again, seeing examples of implementation in North American communities. So our wish is really that this will recognize decision-making barriers to NBS implementation on the ground. So enough about the context and all of this. Now I would like to introduce my colleague, Catherine Boyne-Michaud, who will tell you more about each one of these products. Catherine?
Yes, thank you, Lucie. I assume you can hear me. Yes, great. So hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Boyne-Michaud, and I'm a project lead at the CC and the Ecosystems Unit. I've been working on the nature-based solution projects over the last 2 years, and I'm happy to walk you through our 4 new guides. And so, as Lucy mentioned, these guides are part of a trilateral efforts from Canada, Mexico, and the United States to help reduce barriers for the uptake of NBS in the context of coastal flood risk. And today I'll focus on the guide's content, structure, and how they can be used in practice. So the 4 guides were designed to be used together, and they cross-reference each other a lot. Readers can, however, also consult specific sections as needed, maybe depending on where they are at in their NBS project. The target audience for the guides was identified as decision makers, as Lucy mentioned. So for example, this could include land use planners, indigenous leaders, government representative, and infrastructure asset owners or managers. The intent was to provide guidance and evidence and tools to support them in the broader implementation of NBS to address coastal flood risk in communities across North America. More recently, through our outreach events, we've heard from practitioners in engineering and environmental services firm that these guides could also serve as a valuable tool in their work with clients by providing an independent and credible reference on NBS. So this is a new audience that we had not initially identified when developing the guides, but that we are now targeting as well. So the guide include step-by-step frameworks to support decision-making. They provide summaries of current best practices, overview of options and key considerations in different contexts, in addition to case studies highlighting key concept and examples of NBS project in the 3 countries to really ground the information in reality. It's important to understand that these guides were developed to support decision making, as we've mentioned, and that they do not provide in-depth technical guidance or an exhaustive review of NBS literature. They, however, do reference additional key resources that can be consulted for more technical information. In a nutshell, the co-benefit guide can help you understand and value the multiple benefits linked to an NBS project. The retrofitting guide focuses on how to retrofit existing gray infrastructure using NBS, and the 2 monitoring guides can help you design, implement, and evaluate NBS monitoring programs. All the guides include insights from the series of workshops mentioned by Lucy. So let's begin with the co-benefit guide. The co-benefits guide provides practical information and tools to help decision makers understand and consider the additional benefits that NBS project can offer, called co-benefits. So rapidly, co-benefits are the secondary benefits a project can deliver. So in addition to reducing the flood risk, that is the primary benefit. In the guides, these are categorized as environmental, social, and economic co-benefits. It's important to note that the 4 categories of benefits are dynamic and interconnected with significant overlap between each other. And so historically, flood risk management decisions have focused mainly on direct costs and performance, and co-benefits have often been identified in the later stages of flood risk management projects, if at all. However, they are an essential component of NBS, and the guide argues that they should be considered during all phases of project development and implementation. So the guide highlights that assessing co-benefits early in a project can significantly strengthen both project design and decision-making. By integrating co-benefit considerations right from the scoping and planning stages, project teams can take a more holistic view of different project options and identify which approach best meet the needs of the community where the project is taking place. This type of assessments also helps team anticipate potential trade-offs among benefit and set clear priorities. Furthermore, by generating evidence-based projections of the benefits an NBS project could provide, co-benefits analysis becomes a powerful tool for building public support and even securing funding. The guide acknowledges, of course, that the scope and level of efforts required for co-benefit assessment should be proportional to the project scale, risks, and available resources. So in other words, the value of conducting an in-depth co-benefit analysis will also depend on the project context and the specific type of NBS being considered. Although the value of considering co-benefits in NBS project has been established, the guide also highlights a number of barriers to achieving them in practice. So where possible, it provides guidance to help address these gaps, and where challenges remain, it identifies methods and future initiatives that could help reduce them, and that others, such as yourself, could help move forward. To give you a sense of the decision-making tools included in the guide, here we can see an example of the decision-making framework it provides for assessing co-benefits step by step. So the framework is organized into 3 stages: identification, evaluation, and comparison. First, identification. So this stage focuses on understanding the big picture. It involves engaging with different actors, government agencies, and indigenous peoples, as well as identifying the experts needed to help determine the potential co-benefits of a project. Second, valuation. So here, the project team determines the potential value or impact of each co-benefit. This includes selecting appropriate valuation methods, choosing performance indicators, establishing baselines, and estimating the value of the co-benefits identified. Third, comparison. So this final stage involves assessing trade-offs, prioritizing co-benefits, and comparing how different design options perform. The guide recommends using a multi-criteria analysis to capture intangible benefits and account for project-specific objectives. As you can see, each stage in the framework has clear outcomes and is broken down into concrete, actionable steps that are described, making it easier for project team to apply the process in practice. Valuing co-benefits qualitatively or quantitatively is fundamental for the effective implementation of NBS and the realization of co-benefits. And so the guide provides an overview of valuation methods and of selection criteria, including the type of co-benefit, the project's potential impact or risk, data availability, resources, expertise, and overall project needs. As you can see here, the guide presents a spectrum of methods for valuing environmental, social, and economic co-benefits based on project impact and available resources. So from lower effort, qualitative expert judgments or case study review to higher level efforts approaches like conceptual modeling, cost benefit analysis, or field surveys. The guide also highlights that when valuing co-benefit, there is often a focus on the economic value of outcomes, which inadvertently devalues less quantifiable or intangible social and environmental co-benefits and potentially economic co-benefit as well. And so the guide recognizes the importance of adopting a more holistic approach to valuation, which moves away from the idea that value is money and vice versa. And so here you can see an example of a case study from BC, Canada that was included in the guide to showcase an example where the comparison of a conventional, so gray intervention, and a do-nothing approach was completed. In this case, the assessment resulted in a negative valuation for the proposed solution in comparison to doing nothing. Therefore, the project design was amended, resulting in a beach nourishment project. And so that the project could provide additional co-benefits, which better align with the town's priority. Some of the key takeaways from the co-benefit guides are engagement. So engagement is key to identify local issues and challenges and to identify project priorities and potential co-benefits. The engagement process should be accessible, inclusive, equitable, and meaningful to achieve optimal results. And different components and steps are included in the guide to go over this process. Multidisciplinary teams are needed to be able to properly assess and value co-benefits. Resource limitations must also be considered when selecting valuation methods and defining co-benefits. Co-benefits implementation strategy to be grounded in reality. And finally, multi-criteria analysis approach should be used when comparing co-benefits to account for intangibles and project-specific objectives and compare flood risk management options holistically. Now we can turn to the retrofitting existing infrastructure guide. Sorry for the French accent. So retrofitting existing flood risk management systems with NBS involves replacing, modifying, or enhancing existing gray infrastructure with natural or nature-based features and processes. In the guide, the term retrofitting is used in the context of improving the performance and diversifying the benefits of coastal defense systems using NBS. As you're probably aware, many coastal communities throughout Canada, Mexico, and the United States rely on heavily engineered or gray structures, including dikes, seawall, rock armoring, and breakwaters, to provide a certain degree of protection from flooding and erosion hazards. With much of the current coastal protection infrastructure exceeding or nearing the end of its life and not necessarily designed to accommodate the effects of climate change, the guide points to a real opportunity to consider the role of NBS alongside or instead of these conventional approaches. It argues that NBS can be adapted to retrofit existing flood risk management system to increase protection, mitigate damages, extend the life of existing structure, and increase the climate resilience of structures and communities. The guide's objectives overall are to demonstrate the value proposition of retrofitting and outline incentives. It provides a comprehensive summary of retrofitting options for different types of ecosystems. It also provides an overview of cost comparison and develops strategies to identify and compare retrofitting opportunities and options. So the guide highlights multiple benefits of using NBS to retrofit existing structures that can help build a rationale for using them. And these include increased coastal protection and longevity of flood risk management benefits, enhanced environment and biodiversity, the generation of social benefits from recreation, green space, and improved health, as well as economic benefits from employment and tourism. Although there are numerous benefits associated with NBS retrofits, the guide also highlights several barriers to their broader uptake for flood risk management. The guide aims to directly fill several of these gaps and overcome barriers where possible. And where challenges remain, it identifies methods and future initiatives that could help reduce them and that others could move forward. So same here, to give you a sense of some of the tools included in the guide, here is an example of the decision-making framework to scope retrofitting opportunities and options. The framework is organized into two stages, identification and evaluation. So first, identify opportunities. This stage involves creating an inventory of existing assets, developing an engagement strategy, evaluating needs, assessing site suitability, and prioritizing identified retrofitting opportunities. Second, evaluate options. This stage involves evaluating and comparing a wide range of retrofitting options, including a do-nothing approach. The guide recommends using a multi-criteria analysis here again to compare project-specific flood risk management benefits and co-benefits for each options. As for the co-benefit guide, you can see that both stages in the framework have clear outcomes identified and that they are broken down into concrete, actionable steps, making it easier for project team to apply the process in practice. I'll also show you other examples of the type of information that's included in the guide to help decision making. So here you can see an example of information on potential site constraints that's included in the guide to be considered as part of the scoping process. So there's different elements that are listed as well as different questions that the project team should be asking itself when scoping, when thinking about the options. Here is another example of some of the information provided for specific ecosystem types, so in this case, wetlands. The guide provides example of potential co-benefit that wetland could bring in the context of a retrofitting project. It also includes key takeaways to consider related to wetland, to doing NBS project with wetlands. The guide also provides a high-level overview of the flood risk management benefits associated with each of the 6 NBS retrofit options that are the beach and dunes, wetland tidal flat, island, terrestrial vegetation, submerged features, and hybrid features. Of course, every NBS project is unique, and the benefits will always depend on local conditions. So this figure and the guide is meant as a general reference rather than a definitive list. The guide also notes that different NBS types can be combined. So for example, pairing offshore islands and marshes to maximize the range of benefits they provide. Here is another example related to cost. And while the guide acknowledges that actual retrofitting costs incurred will be site-specific and that additional cost analysis should be carried out for specific projects, it also identifies some typical costs that may be incurred at each stage, and they are summarized. Here you can see a summary of the relative total costs of undertaking various types of NBS, as well as the costs incurred at various stages of the NBS development cycle, including planning and design, construction, and operation and maintenance. So this helped decision makers in their planning process, and to make sure operation and maintenance costs, including monitoring costs, are not forgotten or afterthoughts. Here you can see an example of a case study from Oregon in the United States. So this was included in the guide to provide an example of a marsh restoration project developed to mitigate repetitive flooding in Oregon that required the retrofitting of existing great infrastructure. Some of the key takeaways from the retrofitting guide includes the acknowledgement that NBS retrofitting projects will often result in hybrid projects, but that these should move the infrastructure towards the green end of the spectrum by enhancing its contribution to natural system function or reducing negative impact on the system. The recommendation to use a multi-criteria analysis to help compare and identify retrofitting options, including NBS, hybrid, conventional, and do-nothing approaches. The guide also outlines different types of incentives and incentives that are existing or that can be introduced that can be used to help build rationale and increase the uptake of retrofitting with NBS. Now we can pass to the monitoring guides. So monitoring is essential to confirm that NBS deliver expected outcomes and to inform adaptive management, especially in the context of climate change. It helps identify what works, what needs adjustment, and supports evidence-based decision-making. One of the barriers to the general uptake of NBS identified in the workshop is the perceived uncertainty surrounding the efficacy of NBS. Monitoring NBS to demonstrate successes and any lessons learned was identified as one of the key tools for decision makers to manage and alleviate certain uncertainties associated with NBS. This resulted in the development of 2 guides on monitoring. The specific objective of the monitoring efficacy guide are to provide a value proposition for investment in monitoring and summarize key administrative and technical considerations for monitoring. The objective of the monitoring efficacy proposed methodology and indicator guide, as its title suggests, dives deeper into monitoring programs and its component by summarizing guiding principles and goals of monitoring, establishing core and additional performance indicator, outlining non-intensive and intensive monitoring methods and techniques, and finally summarizing specific considerations for monitoring NBS options and ecosystems. As mentioned, the guide identifies monitoring as an essential component of implementing NBS, with varied goals and numerous potential benefits, including addressing the perceived uncertainty. Other potential benefits of monitoring NBS identified include the strengthening of public confidence through the sharing of monitoring data and the contribution to broader research efforts. The guide, however, also acknowledges that the scope of any monitoring program needs to match the project's objective, level of risk, and available resources. its value ultimately depending on the specific characteristic of the project and the type of NBS being used. Furthermore, during the workshop series, experts emphasized that monitoring is important for all flood risk management solutions, but that it becomes critical for projects that rely more heavily on the natural or nature-based features, so those situated toward the green end of the green-gray spectrum. As in the previous guides, this document also highlights several barriers and information gaps that hinder monitoring initiative related to NBS, and it aims to directly fill several of these gaps and overcome barriers where possible. Same thing here, when challenges remain, it identifies methods and future initiatives that could help reduce them and that others could move forward. The Monitoring Efficacy Guide provides practical information and guidance on overall NBS monitoring process, administrative and technical considerations for developing monitoring plans, impact of site setting and climate change on monitoring, and comparison of the differences between monitoring conventional, so gray infrastructure, and NBS. The guide stresses the importance of including monitoring activities during the scoping phase of the project and that it should not be an afterthought. Monitoring programs should be designed to be thorough and rigorous, but flexible enough to allow for any adaptation deemed necessary over the project's life, and that monitoring should take place throughout the project's life. The guide also highlights the importance of including the collection of historical, baseline compliance, and operational data. Operational data is of particular importance for adaptive management of NBS, to ensure the performance of flood risk management and confirm that co-benefits have been realized. Accordingly, monitoring parameters and metrics should be directly linked to the performance objectives of the project. The guide also highlights variables that may impact monitoring results and should be considered when developing monitoring programs, such as site characteristics and climate change. To address this, the guide recommends taking a multi-year adaptive management approach to monitoring, combined with investigation of potential climate change impacts. Finally, the guide stresses that data from monitoring should not just be collected, it should inform adaptive management. As we can see in this graph, showcasing the evolution of a beach elevation profile, if monitoring shows that certain benefits aren't realized, or if unintended effects emerge, the plan should be revisited. The guide also highlights the importance of transparency in data management, including sharing, reporting, and open access of data to promote learning and replication. Here you can see an example of a case study from Quintana Roo, Mexico, that was included in the guide. So this was included to showcase innovative funding sources for monitoring, where the Mesoamerican coral reef has been repaired using insurance payouts. Now, if we turn to the proposed methodology and indicator guide, so it complements the high-level monitoring efficiency guide that I just presented by offering detailed, concrete options. So this guide is more of a technical guide. It targets monitoring practitioners, engineers, ecologists, and project designers. It outlines experiment designs, monitoring frameworks, data management, and indicator selection tailored to different type of NBS. Among its most valuable contribution is a detailed table of performance metric and indicators tailored to different ecosystem types. It also provides optional metrics for social and economic performance. As you can see here, the guide organizes performance metric into categories aligned with the fundamental project objective, so flood risk management objective, environmental, social, and economic objective. The guide highlights that these 4 categories are dynamic and interconnected, and that in practice, many performance indicators can be associated with more than one category, with the project's goal dictating both the measurement technique and results interpretation. The increased efficiency and effectiveness To increase the efficiency and effectiveness of monitoring programs, the guide recommends to include indicators that will do double duty when possible, so assessing progress towards multiple objectives with one measurement. For each category, it proposes both core and optional indicators. Core indicators may be included to meet project-specific objectives for more complex site or not well understood environment, or also to inform future NBS projects. Several monitoring techniques are also identified depending on project context. Importantly, there's a mix of expert-led and community-led method to maximize practicality and engagement. And the techniques are categorized as such to facilitate decision-making. So you really can see for the different techniques who could be implementing them. The guide strongly recommends adopting the FAIR approach for data, which means that the data must be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we're talking here about the monitoring data. It also emphasizes documenting analysis methods, metadata, and encouraging public reporting. The guide argues that this promotes transparency, reproducibility, and broader learning across practitioners. Finally, key takeaways from both monitoring guides. One of the main takeaways is that collaboration and communication are key for advancing monitoring efforts for NBS. Expanding data access and dissemination is essential to build a strong foundation for future NBS and to promote them to the public at large. Collaboration, both within a project and between various monitoring initiatives, is key to reducing data collection costs and providing more meaningful information to NBS research and development projects. Furthermore, given the relevance of co-benefits, the performance of NBS should be assessed from a wide perspective by a multidisciplinary project team. The guides also provide a useful overview of the differences between monitoring conventional, so gray infrastructure, and NBS that can be helpful for practitioners and decision makers less familiar with NBS projects. Overall, some of the cross-cutting themes that you can find that comes out of the 4 guides are that engagement is fundamental. So the co-benefit design and monitoring all require multi-sector actor collaboration, also to make sure that the project is well implemented in the community. Uncertainty is expected but manageable through monitoring and adaptive management. Data matters. Capacity building and funding alignment are also key and can help facilitate going through some of the barriers. Oops, sorry. Finally, as we said, the guides are meant to be used by decision makers, but other examples are, for example, a coastal city planner is assessing whether to retrofit a seawall or restore a marsh, and so they can consult the guides, the retrofitting guide and the co-benefits framework to assess the trade-off. Another option is somebody from an NGO was designing a dune restoration project and can use a monitoring methodology guide to help set up an effective community-based monitoring plan. Or again, funders evaluating proposal can use the co-benefits and monitoring frameworks to assess the robustness and long-term viability of NBS proposals. Each guide also includes a list of opportunities to address some of the barriers to the uptake of NBS, as mentioned. So a total of 67 opportunities have been identified and can be taken on by different actors to address different barriers, different aspects. These include institutional barriers, such as resolving conflicts between jurisdictional and agency regulations, requiring project teams to commit to data distribution, and developing funding streams. I also wanted to share that we will be publishing 3 accompanying briefing notes on the CEC website in the coming days. And so these briefing notes complement the guides and can be used as communication tools or to get a sense of what is included in the guide as they highlight some of the key information from the report in a concise manner. And they will be available in English, French, and Spanish. So stay tuned. You have the website, the CC website at the bottom. Finally, I really want to acknowledge and thank everyone who contributed to the creation of these guides, from the authors, DHI, CB West, and St. Mary's University, to the project steering committee, and to the expert that participated in the different workshop, without who these reports could not have been done. So to everyone, thank you. This has been a great achievement. That's all for my presentation and the overview today. So happy to turn to the Q&A section of the webinar and to answer any questions you may have.
So just should you have any questions, you can enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the of your screen. Again, the Q&A box is there. You can enter your questions in any language. Well, any of our three languages, that is English, French, or Spanish. Yeah, I'm seeing a question here that we touched upon. Somebody is asking in Spanish whether the methodologies in the guides can be applied to other situations, not specifically coastal zones. As I briefly mentioned at the beginning, it is designed for coastal zone flood risk, but of course, a lot of the processes that are described in there can easily be applied to other situations. And I'm turning to Catherine to see if there is more to add on this, Catherine.
No, I think you're exactly right. Maybe some of the more specific examples that are given for the type of ecosystem or risk may varies a bit, but overall the process should be applicable.
Thank you. I'm seeing another question to see if we can present, if these guides can be presented in a workshop for decision makers. Of course, anybody who is considering these options can set up a workshop or a presentation so that people can be informed on the use of the guides. Right now, just indicating that this here workshop, this webinar, pardon me, is being recorded and will be shared in a few weeks on our site. So you can also use this as an entry point to the documents. And then, of course, you can do your own activity based on these. Of course, if you have any kind of questions like this as to how you can use this or other examples, you have our contact that Catherine already shared her contact, and it will be available on our site, or you can just go to info@cec and use that link to ask us how to use this. Again, turning to Catherine to see if you have anything to add on this, Catherine.
No, same. It's really great to see the great feedback and the comments that people are posting in the chat. I'll also mention, these guides are published on their website in the 3 languages, and they're available for anyone to use. We don't put any barriers in terms of registration to download the guides, so it's always great to hear from you if ever you do use them, so that we know that they're being used and how they're being used. So please never hesitate to reach out to us, even if it's just to let us know how to look, use it for this and this, with great, this could be improved. We always like to hear feedback. So thank you.
I'm taking another question here, asking if the project on the nature-based solution has ended. Yes, so the CC, we work on projects that typically last anything from a year and a half to 4, maybe 5 years. And this project that started now 4 years ago is ending at the end of this month. So this is why we are presenting now the contents, because it's the result of all of this work. So there is no longer a project nor an opportunity to collaborate on a project because the project is ending. I am turning to, there is another question at the top. I might be missing some of my Spanish to answer this correctly. I don't know if Nicole, if you can help me with the question from Isabel.
So she's asking if there is other options that can be like basically the guys apply to like out of the coastal zones or anything out from South America.
Okay, and that's what I thought. So I think this is a question we answered already. It can be applied to other areas in general, the processes, although some of them really apply to coastal zones. Many of the processes and many of the approaches are more universal. It is about taking people to a process to consider options.
And maybe Lucy also, because I think part of the question was, can it be used in South America? So the guides were developed to be relevant to the three countries in North America, so Canada, US, Mexico. So because of this and because of the multiple jurisdictions that exist at different levels of government, laws, regulation, it does provide overview of things to consider, but it doesn't dig deep into those specific elements because it would be too different. So because of that, I think it can probably be used quite easily in other regions as well. Of course, the type of ecosystems and some of the examples are maybe less relevant, but it should be adaptable quite easily, I would think.
I'm seeing another question here asking if it is possible to contact any organizations engaged in nature-based solution examples for a direct return. Of course, the guides, and Catherine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe all the references are there when we have case studies and the like, so that people can directly find where the practitioners who have applied these can be contacted.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, I don't believe there will be the email address of the people, but there should at least be some link to the project webpage or the organization's webpage that could help you do the follow-up.
Okay, I'm seeing a question on whether these guides can be used in a more desertic environment. Again, they are meant for generally for coastal situations. They don't dig down into those specifics, but I think that a lot of the work does apply. Somebody else, Valerie Ann, is asking whether these guides have been shared with educators in colleges and universities and high schools. No, they have not. We would be very happy to reach out to other users if you have ideas for us. If if you have groups that you think would benefit. Generally, our understanding is that these are really geared towards practitioners doing this work on the ground who want to discuss this with decision makers. But we're certainly more than happy to explore other audiences, and if you can drop us a message with specific ideas about it, we'd be happy to reach out. I believe there are no, I cannot see new questions here. Let me. Somebody's asking if it's possible to plan another webinar, focus on methodology and monitoring. At this time, because the project is ending, we do not have a plan for other webinars, but it is something that we can consider if there is a demand for it and if there is a possibility on our side. But at this time, there are no plans to do this. I don't believe there are new questions. I don't know, Catherine, if there is anything you would like to add, any other options. Of course, there is, if we have no new questions, we still have a small ask out of you. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Yes, no additional question or comments. Really, just thank to everyone who have joined, and thanks for having shared your comments and your message and your positive feedback. It's really great to hear. This has been long in the making, so we're really excited to have been able to publish them and present them to you. We also, I guess the last slide is please send us your feedback on the webinar and the presentation so you can access the survey by scanning the QR code. You'll also receive a follow-up email in the coming days. But that's all on my side. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, everyone, and please go and use the guides. They are yours to use on our website in the 3 languages. Thank you.